All right, hello, and welcome everyone. Uh, Thanks for coming to number three of our AI for You web series. Today's topic is data readiness and AI governance. And let's do our introductions. My name is Michael Marino. I'm a director at The Groove, and I work in our advisory services practice. And I've been doing consulting in a variety of applications for about 29 years, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. Take it away, Billy.
Thanks, Michael. My name is Vili Dardanus, and I am the solution architect working on our Databricks strategy, and have close to 30 years of experience and live right outside Fort Worth, Texas.
Thanks. Let's look at the agenda. So obviously, we're going to talk about data governance and some organizational challenges that you may be struggling with to get started and align your data. We'll also talk about the difference between data management and governance, as well as talking about what level you're at in your evolution of having a proper data model. And then we'll talk about the journey, how you navigate from your current state to an AI maturity level, and talk about where's this data coming from and how does it get to the consumers and what do we need to design to fill their needs. We'll also bring it home by talking about how the Groove can assist and avoid some of these pitfalls, talk about data strategy and the benefits of having an AI strategy, as well as showcasing a few bits of documentation and dashboards. So this is about a 30-minute presentation, but we want to save some time at the end for questions. So as we're going through, you have something that you want to ask us, we'll address it at the end. So put it in the chat, and our helper, Caitlin Tuck, who's also listening in on the call, will address the questions at the end. So without further ado, let's dive into data governance. Um, Before we actually do that, I just want to pop out. There's always some sort of Gartner alert, some sort of study or surveys or information that came out. So I don't want to be the wet towel, but as you can see from this statistic, a lot of companies will fail 70% and not meet their strategic objectives or their goals defined up front. And I believe there was a little footnote in this particular statistic. Some fail catastrophically by 24%. That sounds quite daunting indeed. Let's move on to some of those challenges, and Vili will walk us through some of those gotchas that we need to address right out of the gate.
So thanks, Michael. So adding to that little Gartner report, I had another Gartner report that basically said that 40% of businesses fail to achieve their objectives due to missing or incorrect or inaccurate data, which ultimately causes a problem for that company and eventually might shut down. So to address some of those issues, right, that we see and we have seen in the past, organizational issues, right, we'll start with these six areas that are not alone. I mean, there's more, but the six that are usually prevalent to organizational challenges. One, everybody knows about maintenance costs, right? IT costs rise and rise every year. Some of those problems and a lot of those problems are due to the growing data volume, right? So instead of, taking data away that's not needed, just lop it at the end and it keeps growing, right? Which leads to the distrusting of data because there's no data governance on that data that's there, which goes down to the data integrity, which now has inconsistencies across the enterprise, right? Which also leads to the user, the business units themselves, creating the shadow IT systems, right? Whether it's a local server or it's a cloud instance, right? To meet their business goals, they create that. So now you have a decentralized environment, right? With which can cause all kinds of unsupported systems.
Mhm.
So when a senior executive looks at it all holistically, they probably get two or three different answers on the same set of data that they're supposed to see one value for, right?
Yeah, I can
So,
I can see that happening, particularly when people don't trust the data or they don't like the way it's packaged, and they may download it, put it in Excel, have their own pivot tables or own databases. And then when they go to those meetings, the numbers don't jive, and we're just constantly questioning. I mean, the key thing about that you touched about integrity and that user adoption kind of go hand in hand. If I don't like the data, the way it's packaged, or I can't consume it the way I need it, then I'm going to create my own offline repository of data. So you can, with a robust and active user adoption or change management plan, to kind of get people to come along. But if, like we said, if the data is not good, we don't know where it comes from, and throw AI in the mix, how do I know what's the source of this data? So this
Yeah.
is a daunting task from these six areas that you've highlighted here. Where should we start first? Like, we can do some of these simultaneously, but what do you think is like the very first step in getting started?
I think data governance should be step one, right? At that point, you have to identify the data in the environment first. Where is your data today? Where is it coming from? Where is it going? How detailed is it? What business logic or transformation I'm pouring into that data? And how am I presenting that data to the end user, right? So
Yeah,
data governance should be key one.
I've done some of that in the past, back in my old PeopleSoft days. We had a data dictionary. I went to all the different organizations. What do you call a department? And we just track it. I have six leading zeros. I have a combination of a cost center in this code. Everybody has their own way to define things. So that's the challenge, particularly when you've got integrations in and out. How do I manage that data? And what is this data set that we need to harmonize? So as we move into this space here, explain the difference between your data governance, those rules, and data management.
So as the screen is split into two halves, really it's holistically one, right? So on the left side, you have the oversight, and on the right side, you have the execution. Right on the oversight side, you have to establish rules, right? Rules, policies, security, and it's not just an IT thing, it's IT and business working together as a team to provide, what should be done with the data? What data are we going to actually get to drive this business? And why do we need that data? Right? Why am I building these models? What data do I need for these models? Right? So the data and AI governance kind of go hand in hand, but it sets down a set of guidelines and rules for the data management side to use. Right? So on the data management side, now I have to execute, meaning how do I manage that data that's been set down to me from those policies on the data and AI governance side? How do I how do I take that data? How do I add business logic? And how do I present it to my end user in a meaningful way that drives business, right? Drives revenue, saves
Mhm.
costs, that kind of stuff, right? So this is a key to make sure that your data is ironed properly and there's no distrust going forward.
Yeah, because it's more than just the data source and, as you just talked about, the rules, when do we change versus the data controls that we put on it. But as you introduce AI, it gets a little more complex. So walk us through this here with the different levels. And for folks, while we're going through this, as Billy's listing those areas, and you understand, maybe you can assess yourselves and put into the chat, the number, the level that you think you are based on how we're quantifying these five different levels.
So thank you, Michael. And so on this, there's different ways of doing this if you want, but for simplicity's sake, we've created five different steps, so to speak, from level 0 to level 5. Right? Level 0 meaning there's no capability at all, little governance. There might be some data management tools out there, but nobody's using any consistency in there. To jumping over to step 1, which is level 1, right? Which now we have a tool set that's starting to get centralized, but very limited. And then we go over to level 2, and now we start to see data governance appear itself, right? And the introduction happens of a consistent tool set, both on the data governance side and the data management side. So now we have a kind of a repeatable process there. And then we go into level 3, which we see a defined process, right? Where we have a reduction in manual processes. We're starting to get automation together. We're starting to scale out some of those processes and some of those tools. And we start introducing the AI process or the automation process here between level 3 and level 4. right?
Hmm.
So level 4 now, we have more of a managed environment from what we just did in level 3. We have more automation. We have established performance metrics or KPIs, and we measure the improvements on the data quality at this level. Everything's managed now, right? And we've come into an area where we have data governance, we have data management tools in place, and all we need to do now is when we jump to level 5 is to optimize that environment, right? So we have it in place. Now we got to look and say, okay, so how do we make things better than what they are today, right?
Yeah, and some like in level 4, when you got to that area about your performance metrics, and I've done a couple of roundtables with our customers in the past, and these are great customers. They had a very positive experience with their implementation, and we, bring them back, and we, had some questions for them to answer, and to talk to current um, prospects and other people who are looking to partner with us. And even the more sophisticated, successful customers are going through and they're speaking about their process efficiencies, some of the lessons learned and challenges. And I ask them always at the very end, you didn't buy a system just to pay your vendors quickly or to make sure your payroll is correct. You did it for data intelligence. How are you coming along in those reports? And you'd be surprised, even the very successful have a positive story about their implementations. Like, you know what? The first couple of years, we were just tweaking, turning the knobs, fixing, drowning in tickets. So they kind of postpone their renovation or just the data consumption things, which was, a tragedy, and that they needed to make sure they had the data governance foundation before they start building new reports and ingesting data differently. So in this, you're looking at metrics. We can say we pay that supplier quicker, we have better retention rates, we're posting jobs and getting the hire and the offer much quicker than we did in the past. But what's that little marker right there between 3 and 4 that gets you over that hump so you can start looking at where AI can assist in the flow of work and also data consumption.
Thanks, Michael. So in level 3, usually you're putting together manual processes, right? Level 2 and 3,
Hmm.
you're basically establishing that manual process of finding those gold nuggets, so to speak. So finding the gold nugget in that data. Once you've found that and it's a manual repetition, then you start putting together an automation process. So now you're having the system tell you, I found this, rather than you going out and trying to find it every day, right? So now you're a leg up, right? And you've established that automation going forward. Now you're going to refine it every step of the way as you see it.
So it takes a while to get there. So let's talk about
Mhm.
that data journey. So you've identified, you're basically your data hygiene. Are you ready for AI? And how good is your governance? Walk us through this maturity and
Okay.
explain where people are and what they're shooting for so they can get into advanced automatic decision making quadrant.
So we have two different quadrants here, right? And we have a uh, kind of a, I'm going to call it a little hockey stick going straight up the scale here. And usually what happens, a lot of companies that we've seen are on the supporting the business side or the foundational side, right? Which is the left side, right? And the journey really begins down where it says clean data, bottom left-hand corner. You got to make sure that that's correct first. You can't go anywhere unless that's right, right? Because garbage in will be garbage out on the reports, the ad hoc queries, and everything else going up the hockey stick, right? So at that point, the data's clean, the reports are coming out, ad hoc queries are getting built, data exploration is being done to find those gold data nuggets
Mhm.
that'll drive new revenue. Right? So now you have all those manual things in place, and that foundational side is okay, so what happened in the past, right? So now you've identified what's happened in the past. Now you want to jump in there and say, okay, what do I think is going to happen in the future, right? So there's a couple different areas of looking at. So when we jump on the automated decision making or advanced side, we can start with what we've seen a lot of is the predictive modeling, right? Where I take historical data to predict future events, right? In that modeling process, right? So, I might take, for example, I might take and forecast predicting patient risk, you know, based on different treatments that he's been going through, right? So how do I predict what's going to happen to him based on that, right? Because things have happened to him before based on that, right? So what things do I need to put in place so I respond quicker? That's where we get into the prescriptive analytics, right? So from things that are going to happen, how do I prepare myself to be ready to handle that situation? And that's where the prescriptive analytics come in, right? So I
So the
might, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so I might prescribe something, right? Because I know it's going to happen,
Hmm.
especially on that patient. I might prescribe, oh, I got to get all this medicine in place. Oh, I got to get something in place for him because I know it's going to happen, 30 days from now, 10 years from now, right? In that instance,
Yeah,
right?
and even from like a supply chain, I mean, remember back from the COVID days, where can you get a latex glove? So you're looking for things from your vendors. What are those lead times? All those predictions are upended if you don't have additional data that's telling you what's happening out in the world and happening with various sorts of items that you're hoping to get, and what's the pattern that has happened in the past with various vendors. So you should be able to make those uh, calculated, uh, assess those calculated risks.
So,
On the top, you've got four or five little square boxes. One of them is green, the data maturity. So of those things, and I'm not sure, are they happening simultaneously? What is the nugget there that you need to do so you can get to that data visualization and be able to have that uh, prescriptive analytics that you need to do to achieve that highest level?
so in order to get to the AI automatically make my best decision, a bubble there at the top, those six areas are different services that we provide here at the Groove. The green one being the most important one. You got to figure out where your data is today. Data maturity. Where's my data? How's it getting in? Are there any gaps in there? Is it providing, and the most important thing, is it providing the value to the business? Or am I not looking at the right data? Should I get data from somewhere else? So that data maturity assessment will handle all of that. And we'll get into the rest of it in the farther slides down below.
Okay. Yeah, the thing is, I mean, you're taking us on that journey, and what I really like about this slide here is we got sources on the left and consumers on the right, and coming from advisory services and looking at strategy. What's the end game? What do we want our humans? Because we're talking AI and we're talking automation, but we're
Right.
still involved in this whole consumption of information. So how do we get from what my needs are? Do I even know what my needs are as a consumer to where does the data live? So walk us through this very colorful and nice looking chart.
Thanks, Michael. So this is your analytical ecosystem blueprint, right? So to speak. On the left side, everything moves from left to right. From the left side, you have your data sources, right? And those data sources are being ingested into some storage container in the middle there. Could be a database, could be a data lake, could be just files, right? And once they've been ingested, now you're going to prepare that data, right? And what I mean by preparing mean I'm going to be applying my business logic, my transformation logic, and I'm going to get that data ready to be consumed by the data engines and the data analytics, or both, right? In a lot of cases right now, we see customers, as we mentioned early on, into that data engine piece. They're just starting to get into the data analytics piece to handle the AI piece of the automation, right? So the data engines, meaning, the SQL graph, data processing, all of that stuff gets pushed over to the very end where it says data consumer, visually using whatever visual tool you might use, Tableau, Power BI, whatever that tool is,
Mhm.
right, to get that information. Right, so and all of that, by the way, needs to be covered all the way at the bottom where you see that purple box that says data governance, right? All the business logic, the rules, the security, the policies, all of that's covered under the data governance and needs to be followed all along the way. That's why it stretches across the whole environment there.
So one of the things I found, even when customers do have a big, robust analytics organization building more on reports, I actually had one a couple of years ago say, we're drowning in data. We don't know which report to run. It's this column's over here. It doesn't really matter. So it seems like we could have a better way to consume data when you have that uh, different intelligence to visualize it that can help your analysts, your executives know what to zoom in on, and if there is any things that are going on with trends or predictive information, that can help them make a decision rather than just, like you said, too much data. What does this mean? How do I know to approve this contract or hire 20 more people in this business unit?
Right?
So
Yeah.
how can we address some of these challenges
Right.
to get them to be that mature and visualize some of that, is the whole reason I hope folks came. How can that groove assist?
Right.
So let's power through and leave some time for questions at the end and address what's our data strategy.
So our data strategy falls into five different services. Each service will have the five uh, different methodology, or our methodology consists of those five different steps: investigate, design, prototype, validate, and launch. Right? Each one of those steps will be done in every one of those different data services that you see below.
So it looks like the easiest thing for folks to do is begin that data governance activity. And so we can achieve that data visualization so we can have better tools to make those decisions.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
let's walk through the benefits of this AI strategy and just, highlight on some of the platform. We've already hit the governance and maturity, but let's
Mhm.
dig deeper more into that platform and again, the visualization approach to your data.
Right. So as you mentioned, the data maturity assessment, which I spoke about earlier, and the data platform strategy outlines whether you're going to use your current platform or you're looking at a new one, what's there that will actually help you drive greater operational efficiency and give you more cost savings, right? And the data intelligent platform and migrating data to it, right? The benefit of that is now you're going to have data in one environment that you can actually build your AI models without having to jump all over the environment to get that data. And we talked about the data governance strategy a little bit, right? So in there, you're going to have, you're going to increase efficiency and reduce risk, right? And at the very end, the data and AI visualization strategy will outline, how you're getting that data, where that data is going, what tool are you using for what type of business decision process you're making.
So some of that, I mean, we talked about metrics and things in previous. So
Mhm.
uh, explain how these maturity scores are calculated. And I do recognize
Sure.
the one at the bottom because that's basically your data dictionary,
Right.
the nerve center of your journey, the beginning.
Yes, and that's where it all starts, right? Down at the bottom there now, it's an Excel spreadsheet, but it could be a table somewhere. You're going to put data in there that pertains to everything data related in your environment, whether it's data sources, data stewards, who has access to what, everything should be in there as a holistic data dictionary, so to speak. The data maturity score on top left corner that you see there, that's something we'll come out with once we analyze the environment and say, okay, here's where you are today. So we take that snapshot, and then we take the snapshot after all the other stuff have been implemented to see where you are in that score. And then the KPIs themselves will be put together based on what we do with the data governance and some of the other things that we do in the environment to capture how are we improving things in the environment.
Yeah, and that's key too. I mean, we could see where we are before we had our AI initiatives. What's our cycle times for things? Have we detected anomalies? Have we eliminated, all these reclassifications in our ledgers? So it's good to know where you are today before you've captured it. And of course, you're gonna have to stay on top of it to look at your models to see if the efficiencies are really coming along. Because, just because you put AI in, like you said earlier, garbage in, garbage out. Well, just because I get the report generated faster, I just have bad results much quicker. So you have to stay on top of that, put those guardrails in there. And, there's always regulations and compliance issues and things like that that you always need to stay on top of to make sure your data is following the rules that are regulated to us, and also how are we addressing the sources and the metadata and all those other security and things that we had to be sensitive to as well. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. I hope you've learned a few things, and if you have some questions, hopefully you've tossed them into the chat, and I will turn it over to Caitlin to see if she has any questions that we can attempt to unpack.
Hi, thanks, Michael. We did have a few questions privately come into the chat. The first one is to leverage the knowledge and tools discussed, is an extend contract with access to AI required?
Yes, I would say yes, because if you're going to build those AI libraries and AI uh, models, you're going to need the contract to get that extend piece inside Workday.
Perfect. Next question is, can you talk a bit about model drift and what do we need to do to monitor it?
So model drift. What happens there is you put together a model. Let's say you did that a year ago, right? So the model is built for that data on that day going backwards, right? So you're gonna do some back testing. So today the data's changed, right? So now you're introducing a different set of bias in there because the data now has drifted or not drifted. Let me use a different word. Is actually not the same, right, as it was a year ago or a week ago. So now you're introducing all kinds of different bias in there based on the data that's coming in. Okay?
So that assessment is that got to be built into your governance to make sure you're checking on the data sets and are they normalized or what is entering into your data sets?
Absolutely. So you might get skewed data at that point. You might get incomplete data, right? So that'll definitely, if you don't model for that, for those changes, if you don't go back and readjust your model, again, garbage in is going to be garbage out, right? So, that theory holds true in this case.
Great. And then, do you have any guidance on how we prevent sensitive data from being exposed?
Well, during the data governance piece, right? So in there, you're going to set down a set of rules, and one of the biggest ones is security, right? What are the security guidelines that you're going to put in place? What data do you want to expose to which groups, internally and externally, right? So all those rules and regulations and guidelines will be put in as part of the data governance policy, right? And those will be followed very strictly through the data management environment. So once the governance is set in place, data management takes over and adheres to those rules and puts those in place on whatever tool they're using to access whatever data they're going to use.
Then finally, the last question is, what is the fundamental difference between data governance and AI governance?
Uh, so data governance is if when I explained it earlier was the okay, the what data am I going to get and why am I going to get that data? The AI governance is going to say, okay, so what models am I going to build based on the policies that I just received from the data governance group, right? And why am I going to use that data and how is that data going to help me in the environment that I'm building it for? Okay, so,
Yeah, and part of that, as you had in that other spreadsheet, is who's the steward of that data, and that's the big question. I'm the consumer, but am I the person who defines what is true? And that's the whole in that design. What are we looking to solve for,
right.
and what are we delivering to our consumers of this data? So they have to be part of that conversation as well. So I think you said that was the last question. If you want to take us home, Caitlin, to talk about our next webinar.
There's actually one last question we
Oh,
just
sorry.
received in the chat. No worries. What
Yeah.
what AI releases are you referring to that you would need to govern and that would show sensitive data that is separate to regular governance?
Mm. So the one I'm talking about are the AI models, right? You're going to build, for example, you want to build a predictive analytic model, right? So in order to build that model, right, you're going to have to look at, okay, so data governance told me that I can only get this data. Here's my security policy. Here's who can see it, who cannot see it, right? So it'll put those guidelines around how you're building that data model, right? So it's kind of a handoff, right? And then you're going to want to govern that data model that you put together to see who can actually access it at what level. Right.
Perfect. Thank you, Billy. Make
You're welcome.
sure you stay tuned to get the details for our next webinar, A Prescription for AI. And thank you for joining.
Yeah, just click on the QR code and you'll get more information about the Groove and our AI strategy approaches. And hope to see you next week to look at AI and healthcare. Bye bye.